Sabbath, everyone.
Happy Sabbath.
What I'm about just to share with you is nothing but a commentary to what we just heard. I have the privilege of leading out on a cultural center back in Germany, where I work as a pastor. It's basically a cultural center which invites people to get together and learn from each other and get inspired through music, literature, arts, and also through traveling together. And just a few months ago, I organized a trip to Israel, and we were some 11 people from different backgrounds who flew to Israel for 12 days. And it was basically my first experience to be in that country, and in so many ways an unforgettable one. I don't know, how many of you have been in Israel? Anybody here who's been there? Yeah, that's quite a few of you. And everyone else I can only recommend. And there were so many layers there which related to me and which impressed me. One of them was to be in the surrounding where Jesus has been, and the apostles and David, and as we were traveling from Jerusalem to the northern part of Israel, noticing that Jesus, our master, came from a very humble area and not from the center of power, which was Jerusalem. And to get this sense of this village person who spoke to village persons in humble ways and changed the world, while the loud music of power was playing in Jerusalem, was a very impressive experience for me. And to imagine how it might have been when David sang those prayers many years ago in some deserted areas. And to walk that land, about whose stories you've read and heard for such a long time, was quite an experience for me. But what really got to me and challenged me and impressed me and got me thinking was the experience I made as I met Jews and Palestinians there. Our guide was a Jewish person, and the bus driver was an Arab, a Palestinian. And in that small land, we have brothers of different faith which are related in a way, with different claims of the same land they both occupy. We have people who cannot live with each other because their perception of how to live in that space is so different that it appears to be irreconcilable in any term that they will find a way to live together. But at the same time, there is nowhere they can go. That's all they have. The Jews and the Palestinians. And that experience, which was embodied in those two persons, became for me a kind of a metaphor for our human dilemma in so many ways. We had this funny experience there while we were traveling in the northern part of Israel. Israel, I should say, because the place where our guide, who was Jewish, took us, is internationally not recognized as the territory of Israel. It is in the northern part, it is the Golan Heights. It's a very mountainous area. And basically that's a huge piece of land with lots of mountains, very, very green and with great water resources, which Israel annexed from Syria back in the late 70s. And thus, the international community recognizes as that piece of land as Syrian territory, while Israel has by now declared it as part of Israel, so to speak, right? Against international law. So now, for them, it's officially Israel. For the international community, it is annexed territory. So what happened was we went there, and it was really, really beautiful, mountainous area, very green. And that's where I ate the best mandarin I've ever eaten in my life. Yeah? Beautiful, beautiful, right? And we were traveling back, and as you can imagine, our guide told us the story of that place, and she told us this is now Israel territory and so forth. And as we were traveling back, as we were driving back, as we left that territory, so to speak, the bus driver, who was an Arab Palestinian, spoke up and looked through the window, waved his hands, and said, "Bye-bye, Syria!" Right? And looked at her, right? And you can imagine she was not particularly amused by this comment that he made, right? She interpreted it as a provocation. And he was making a statement. He was saying, "Man, you were telling those 10, 11 people that this is Israel, but as far as I'm concerned, this is not Israel, this is Syria," right? And those two persons, they work together. They make a living together, right? So this dilemma, which I've seen there, made me aware how complicated it is to live in this world. And we can take this complication and apply them to the different worlds where we come from. We can apply it to Ethiopia, where many of us come from, and the complex situation that we go through as a nation. But we can apply it in so many ways to many complicated geopolitical interests that drive the different stakeholders of the world. You know, it would have been all good if it was not so dangerous. And if it did not have the capacity to ruin so many lives, which it is doing in so many ways. There are so many complex problems in this world which have impacted and are impacting so many people, and where a way out seems utterly impossible. And as I experienced that in Israel, that became, for me, not just a metaphor for the complicated and complex situation of our world, where no solution seems to be in sight in the face of so many major problems, but it also became a metaphor for me, for our personal human relationships, where we are in our journeys, for the complications of some family situations that we might find ourselves in. Exactly, even Siri is getting it. It can be so difficult sometimes, and sometimes even in our families, things can get complex and difficult sometimes. The misunderstandings, the bitterness, their feelings of resentment, unresolved situations. Things that make us angry, shout out loud, or things where we just swallow it and try to deal with the resentment that we feel inside. Things where things can be so complicated that we kind of give up, or where we go like, the only contribution that I can make sometimes is to try not to make it worse than it is. Because there is no solution in sight. Well, let me say this. If you find yourself at a good place where you are, in your relationship, in your family, in your friendships, if things are going good for you, praise the Lord for that. I'm really, really happy for you. If your challenges are in the realm of the manageable and things have not run so complicated, you are really blessed. But please allow me to dedicate the story I am about to share with you and what it means or can mean for us, for those of you or for those of us where we go through stuff which is really complicated. A husband, a wife, 2 sons. The husband, the father, a gentleman. He grew up in a very protected environment. His father and his mother saw to it that no harm would touch him. They kind of pampered him in so many ways because they got this child when they were getting older. So they took care of this kid in the best way possible, and in a way, they overprotected him, and he grows up to be a very quiet, conflict-avoiding gentleman with very tender approach to life. If things go difficult, and there is a conversation that needs to be made, he prefers to avoid it and tries to deal with things in diplomatic ways, and sometimes in a way that avoids conflict. On the other hand, his wife, the mother, a tough person, a hands-on person. She says what needs to be said. She does what needs to be done. And life has taught her to be strong in order to survive. She's assertive. When problems come up, she faces them head on, and she has no issues with saying her mind. A direct and sometimes penetrating type of personality. Basically, the opposite of her husband. And we have the first son, who is an adventurer. He likes going outside, facing new adventures. He's not interested in matters of home. He's interested in doing his thing, realizing himself, discovering new stuff. His brother, a gentleman, a man of the home, a communicator, a person with oversight of the situation, in so many ways like his father. So what happens is in this family that the father has a special relationship to his older son, who is adventurous, because maybe he senses his son embodies something that he is not. In his son, he sees what he wants to be, that hands-on, adventurous guy who would have the courage to do new things. While the mother, who is more of a straight person, feels connected to the younger son with a gentle spirit. You know, I come from a home of 6 kids. I am the youngest. My brother David is the second oldest. And I have a sister. We're 5 boys and a girl. And sometimes I would provoke my parents and ask them, and I do that with my mom sometimes, yeah, to tease her, and I say, "Mom, which of us do you like most?" Right? And what do you think the answer is that comes? All of you, right? Everyone. I like you the same. Yeah. There we go. And that's what parents should say, right? So if your kids ask you, of course, it's the job of parents to say, "I like you all just the same." But of course, we know there are dynamics, right? And there are different types of relationships. And that is natural. So what happened in this family down the way is that the question raised itself, who will carry the story of this family to the next generation? It's one of those families where there is a certain type of tradition of which they feel that God has been in it. It's a family that feels that God has a special purpose for them, which they got from their fathers, and they want to pass that tradition, that calling of a good purpose on to the next generation. And the question raised itself, who is going to be the one to do that? Now, usually in this context, it would be the older, the firstborn, to take over this tradition and pass it on to the next. But the firstborn did not have much interest in the bigger context of his family as much as basically doing his thing. While the younger person was more interested in family matters and in the treasure of which he felt that has been preserved in this family, and he wants to pass it on. Now, in this situation, the father is called to face things and make tough decisions. And in this situation, it would be to call the one who is open for this job. But instead, he avoids it. He does his thing, he stays connected to the older one, and ultimately when he gets old and has to make decisions, against all reason, he goes on to want to bless and pass on the tradition through the older son. And assumingly, it was obvious that he was not really interested, and his mother, in this case, the wife, might even have reminded him and said, there's something wrong here. The younger one is really interested. He's cherishing our tradition. He's the one who needs to be called here. And in fact, at some point she even remembered a dream that she had a long, long time ago, before even those children were born, in which she sensed that the younger one is going to be the one who will take responsibility. But none of the advices that she gave seemed to have worked out. The father does his thing and creates a dilemma for the whole family by calling on the older son to bless him and to call him for the next generation. And this dilemma leads the mother and the younger brother to a situation that they say, we have to act now before it is too late. And they organize a way to fool that old man and act as if the younger brother is the older brother to get the blessing. Many of you sense which story we're sharing with each other with. And the worst thing that can happen happens. There is this man not taking responsibility, creating a dilemma. Now there is this wife and this son cheating on their husband, on her husband in this context, and on the father. So they manipulate the situation. And in this context, the mother manipulates the situation to get the thing of which she believes she needs to get it. It has to be got. And the younger son manipulates the situation as well by telling his old father, by fooling him into believing that he is the older son. And he actually gets the blessing. But you know what I ask myself? If you manipulate someone to get something that you want, who actually gets it? You or the person you are acting to be? I think that's the problem with making ourselves whom we are not. We might even get what we want. We might get the attention, we might get the thing that we want, but it's not us really getting it because we are not ourselves. So here's a situation. A father messes up by not making important decisions. A mother messes up by manipulating to get what she wants. An older son messes up by not taking responsibility, but by just doing his thing. And a younger brother messes up by getting it what it's about, but by being manipulative and acting like someone whom he is not. And the result is that this family is destroyed. Basically, for always. I would like to ask you, if you have your Bibles, to open with me to Genesis chapter 28. And before I read there, starting verse 10, this is one of those stories that really gets at me. And shows me a dilemma which grows to be in which everyone has a part. And the story follows the one of the younger son. While that family is destroyed, we are told before them that the older brother wants to kill him. Because he's angry, of course, right? He feels betrayed. So the mother comes up with another plan and says, we have to send you away, the younger one, until things settle down. And she manipulates the situation in a way, again, which is really graceful, by asking her husband and saying, you know, our younger son, he should marry someone who believes like us, and not like the older son who's married to, people of other religion and other folk. Because otherwise, if he marries like someone from the people around here, I'm going to cry. I don't want to live, right? So she starts crying, kind of thing. You can read that in 27. And the father says, let me think about this. You know what? I have an idea, he says. And he calls Jacob. That's what we read in the first verses. And he says, Jacob, do not marry anyone from here, right? I'll send you to our family far away and get a wife over there, right? And he blesses him and sends him away. And perhaps he even looked to his wife and said, baby, I'm good, right? I took responsibility. But he's being played, basically, yeah? She organized it so that he can flee, that he does not get killed by his brother. That's what she actually did. While Isaac, the father, felt like, I have good solutions now. Now, this is this young man. One day earlier, he slept at home. All is good. Now he has manipulated his father. He has destroyed his relationship to his father, to his brother, who is his enemy now. And he has to leave his mother, whom he loves, and go to a country he has never been before. And knows that life is going to be tough. And it is his responsibility that he is where he is. And that's where the story comes in. And I want to read with you starting verse 10. It says there, now Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it as his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to the heaven, and there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie, I will give to you and your descendants. Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south. And in you and in your seed all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you. Now this is what happens. There is this guy in the middle of nowhere, vulnerable. He has lost his family. He does not know whether he will ever come back. He does not know what's going to await him. Just a day or two earlier, he slept at home, all is good. Now he's in the middle of nowhere in such a vulnerable situation. And in a metaphoric sense, the text tells us that there is a stone at his side and he lays his head. And I kind of wonder what he thought to himself. He wanted to get all and lost everything. He wanted to get that blessing, right? But he lost it. He destroyed the relationship. And there is nothing that he can even say for his own defense. He cannot even look up to God and say, what's wrong, God? Why am I in this misery? Because he brought himself into this misery. And he knows that he has cheated on his father and cheated on his brother. It's all darkness. There is no hope. And in that situation, he finds himself in, and when he had to finally sleep because he was dead tired at some point, he has a dream of a ladder. And he sees angels coming up and down as if to tell him that the connection is not broken. And what we just read is in this dream, God himself speaking to him. And as I read these words, I don't quite get them, because if I was God, I know what I would have said in this situation. Let me say I'm God and I have a plan with this guy, right? The first thing, if I speak to him, well, normally I would wait that he comes to me. If he doesn't come, I'll go to him and say, Jacob, what have you done, man? You messed it up. You messed up my plan. You messed up the bigger picture. You know, what's up with you, man? How can you do this? Now look, the first thing that you have to do now is go back home, apologize to your father, apologize to your brother, and talk to your mom and take responsibility. And when you're done doing that, we'll talk. And I would have said that if I had a good day, right? The very words that Jacob hears in this situation, where he has messed up and he's responsible for it, and he does not know what's coming to him, are words of affirmation. Words in which God says, my plan with you has not changed. I'm the God of Abraham, I'm the God of Isaac, and I'm going to bless you with the blessing I have blessed your parents with. And in the blessing that God says to him that you shall have this land and you shall be fruitful, is basically the same blessing that was given to his father and to his forefather. It's a code word indicating to him, our story will continue. You're going to do just fine. My plans for you have not changed because you have messed up. Amen. I will be with you. And the most existential part of this text for me personally is verse 15, where God says to him, I am with you. How does Jacob feel in that situation? He feels like God has left him, right? And God says to him, I am with you. And what is the next thing that Jacob feels? He does not know what is awaiting him. And the very next thing that God says to him is, I will keep you wherever you go. Future, right? I will be with you wherever you go. In the face of uncertainty which is awaiting you. And there's something more that Jacob does not know whether it will ever happen to him. And that is whether he will ever come back home. And the next thing that God says to him, I will bring you back to this land. I'll bring you back home. You'll be back. And I will not leave you until I have fulfilled everything what I just promised to you. Sisters and brothers, isn't that beautiful? Yeah. When I read this text, and it means a lot to me, Amen. I sense, if that's how God deals with people who really mess up, and Jacob has really messed up, and the consequences of his messing up are going to have an impact on his life for a long, long, long time. He's going to have a very, very troubled and hard journey. And that does not change. But if God deals with people who mess up like he dealt with Jacob when he messed up, then this is the God I want to have. Yeah. So if this is the God what we're talking about, then I want him. And I'm grateful for him. And if you feel in your life that you have messed up here and there, and if you find yourself in some complications for which you are responsible, which have made your life or your situation rough, and if you find yourself in a situation where the consequences that you are going through are really difficult and tough, this word, this story says to you, you are not alone. Amazing. In the midst of it all, there is a God who is at your side. Who will see you through. Who will see me through. Jacob wakes up and he does not believe what happened. And it takes many, many, many years for him to face the things that he was not yet ready to face. But through it all, God was faithful and he was at his side. So two things as I close. That I wish for you, that I wish for me. When things get in your situations, in my situations, it can be in our relationships, in our families, where we are. And things do get rough sometimes. I hope for you and for me that God helps us to take a deep breath before we act, before we say something, before we do something. And if we find ourselves in a situation where we cannot make things better, let us, by his grace, find the courage and wisdom not to make them worse, at least. Sometimes a ceasefire is the best that we can get. Yeah. So in your respective situations, if you go through complex situations, in your relationships, in your families, where you are, I hope for you and for me that God helps us to take a deep breath and say, I trust in you. And help me to let go and not take things into my hands. Because when we do so, in our own ways, and become aggressive or manipulative or do things that are not going to help, it's going to make things more difficult. And the second thing, and that is not a wish, that is a promise. If you have messed up, and if things have run in a complicated way, if God dealt with Jacob the way he did, that's the God we serve. That's the kind of God we're dealing with. He is there, and he will remain and carry you and me through. Amen.
Father in heaven, you never cease to amaze us. What you did for Jacob, you can do for us. And we praise you for that. And as we end our service today, may the message and the experience of being here in your presence go with us the rest of our lives. Thank you for what you did for Jacob. And thank you for the promise and for the affirmation that what you did for him, you'll do for us. We leave here with your blessing, with these words. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.